Hello and a massive welcome to our show again this week. So we've got a slightly different lineup this week. We're going to do something a little bit different because we had quite a big question. So we thought that we would make the show into that question. And we were asked something about child abuse. And we thought, yeah, let's look at these things. There's things going on in the world that maybe aren't great, and maybe it is time for us to look at some of those things, because I know Bec and I are always happy and jolly and smiling, and we like to spread lots of love and smiles into the world. But sometimes I know people can watch what we're what we're up to, and then go, yeah, but what about these some of the terrible things that go on in the world? So as always, just before we get into that, we're going to tell you a little bit about a couple of things that we have got going on, and then we'll dive right into that. So this week, I wanted to actually talk about, on our board, Bec wrote that she was going to say this, and I'm just going to trample all over what Becca's... She hasn't even managed to get a word in edgeways yet, can you notice? I want to talk about a programme that Bec is doing called Finding Your Voice. And I know we have been putting out a little bit about that, but I have watched Bec over the last few years really find herself and find her voice and find out who she is. And to me, this whole journey that we are on, everything that this is about, our business is Dare to Be You, and everything we do is about pointing people to find themselves, find your place in the world, find you, find who you are. And I've really watched Bec come out of herself because she has found that for herself, in herself. And she's doing an amazing program that I have watched her beaver away on her computer, all sorts of things. I've watched her do some amazing videos. It's been great. It's like watching my little child grow up and go out into the world. It's been amazing watching what she's been up to. And she has a masterclass that she's doing that is like a little bit of a taster for the program. You absolutely don't have to go on the program if it's not if you do this you have to do that, but it's just if you're interested and you want to put your toe in the water, you want to have find out what Bec's up to. She's doing a masterclass, and now I'm going to fall at the first hurdle of when is it, so you might have to jump in now, Bec.
Sunday the 8th of November, from 10 a.m. till 12:30. So a couple of hours together, and it will, like Deb says, it's sort of a taster of the program, but equally it's standalone, so you can just come along to that and have a great time there. But it is only open to 6 people. There's only 6 places available on that masterclass.
And it is a paid program. The masterclass it is a paid for thing, but if you are on our mailing list, you do get a discount. So maybe that's an incentive to sign up to our mailing list. And if you have got any questions about that, I will make sure there's information underneath this video wherever you're watching it, or around the video somewhere, wherever you're watching this. And always feel free to get in touch with us if you ever have any questions about any of the things that we talk about.
Yes, yeah, indeed. And so since Deb stole my line and talked about my masterclass and my program, I'm going to switch up and talk about hers, because a massive part of finding my voice and being able to put together a program about that happened for me because I did Deb's mentoring program. So when would that have been? Just maybe nearly 2.5 years ago, I did a mentoring program with Deb, and that mentoring program since then has evolved and grown legs, and it's taking beautiful shape. And so if you're interested in what we do and how we work and ways to really get to know more about who you are and how you can find your voice, another way of doing that, if you're not coming to my masterclass, or even if you are, is to join in with Deb's mentoring. Yeah, you could definitely do both. It'd be amazing together. But yeah, Deb does a mentoring program, and it's a month-by-month program, so you can join in for as long as you like. I probably technically am still doing mentoring with Deb, actually. One of the joys of being working together. So if you want to know more about that, there's a page on our website, which again, I'm sure we'll make sure there's a link to that. It would be fabulous. It is fabulous to work with Deb, and you wouldn't want to miss out. So find out more about that on our website.
Thank you. So, right, let's dive into this week's show. So this week, we had someone ask a question. We talked about, a little while ago, we talked about domestic abuse. And off the back of us talking about that, we had somebody ask us a question about child abuse. You know, what about that? What about when that happens in the world? And we decided that, yeah, we weren't going to ignore that. We would talk about that on our program. You know, what is our job in society? You know, what's going wrong in society that kind of thing can go on, and what can we do? And is there something, and should we be doing something? And, you know, all these kinds of questions. And I know the person who raised this question, or we were actually having a conversation, and part of that conversation was about, what about the effects if that is something that has happened to you? You know, when you were a child, what if you experienced something like that? So half of what was going on is, you know, how do we help people who that has happened to in the past? You know, now they're grown-ups and they're perhaps suffering in many ways, and it's had an impact on their entire life because of something that happened to them when they were a child. You know, what about that side of it? How do we help those people? And then the other side of it, you know, what about the fact that it appears to still be going on in our society right now? What do we do about that? So that was like the two sides of what of the question that was asked, really. And so to address the first bit to start with, I can't speak from personal experience because that wasn't my experience. Nothing like that ever happened to me. So the first thing that I want to do is hold my hands up and say, I can't speak from personal experience in that way. And I know when we did the program about domestic abuse and that sort of thing, I could speak from personal experience. So it was slightly different maybe, but here I can't speak from personal experience. But what I can speak from is personal experience of seeing what happens, you know, how human beings work, how we are all the same, how we work in exactly the same way, and how knowing how we worked helped me with the things in my life that did traumatize me, that did, you know, stress me out, that did frighten me to death, that did take me to dark places in my mind. Which I guess, you know, when we are talking about people who are perhaps now adults and it feels as if their life has taken a perhaps not the most healthiest of paths because of something that happened to them when they were small, and maybe it turned them, maybe it turned something in them to be like pressed a self-destruct button maybe. And what I have seen, you know, if we do get to that place, if for whatever reason, whether it is child abuse or whatever kind of trauma, and even I think sometimes when we haven't had trauma in our life and then we press the self-destruct button, we can press it even more because we think, I haven't even got a reason that I'm completely off the rails and wrecking my entire life. What I have seen to be really, really helpful for all human beings is to look to how we work and what is going on for us now in this moment. And that isn't to it isn't to take off, it isn't to take anything away from what happened, you know, any experience that anyone has had in their life. Nothing that we say is about not listening to that, to just glossing over that in a way that says we're not interested in the fact that that happened to you and that doesn't matter and just get over it. Not in a dismissive way. We respect, because I know both Bec and I have had moments in our life of stress and strain and trauma. We all experience those things, and it is not nice. So it's not about not acknowledging that. But then it is about looking for how can we move forward in this moment. And to me, understanding that as human beings, the way we work is we feel our thinking in this moment. And if we are still traumatizing ourselves and still going through trauma, it is absolutely worth understanding how it is we are still being traumatized and affected right now, and what thought patterns we believed and took as real by accident because of something that happened to us in that way. How we took certain thought patterns, how certain thoughts and feelings, what we made them mean, and what we are now continuing to do to ourselves as we move forward. And yet, absolutely, there are some times in life when we are powerless and somebody else does something to us. And then it's recognizing that, yeah, that happened, but we're not powerless now. We're in a different place in our life. And what can we do right now to move forward from that with the knowledge of how we work, what everything that we point to in this conversation.
And like the second half of what you kind of started with there around, you know, if there's child abuse going on now in our society, what do we do about that? How do we, you know, where do we go with that? And I'm going to start by holding my hands up and saying, I don't know the answer to that. No. I don't know the exact solution to that right now. So what kind of comes to me around that is, what do I know? And when I talk from what I do know, it's amazing what comes for me or for someone listening or for people out in the world. So I'm going to talk about what I do know, because I have seen that to be immeasurably helpful in all sorts of circumstances. And what I do know is this: our theme this week, kind of during our work and what we do, we often have a running theme of the week. And if we hadn't have hijacked the whole show to talk about this topic, our theme this week would have been love. And for me, that is what I do know. And in the bit that Deb was just talking about, kind of if you're an adult or somebody that's been through some trauma, where you're at now, or whether there's something that's actually going on out in the world that you know about, that's happening in your family, in your life, what I know is that we are all love. At our core, underneath any trauma that we're experiencing in the moment, or that we can look back on and be aware has happened to us, underneath that, there is something about us at our core that is undamageable. And we term that love in this conversation, and that, you know, there's a few other ways we talk about that, and I think those metaphors can be quite helpful. For example, we talk about having a diamond, an unbreakable diamond at our core. And I think in this conversation, when I kind of started with, I don't know what the answer is directly. You know, I don't know what the exact solution is out in the world to stop child abuse. But to come back to what I do know, I know that every single person on this planet at their core has an unbreakable diamond that wants to shine outwards, that wants to be seen, that wants to be heard. And what happens to us, what happens sometimes for each of us, is if we don't know that, we cover it up, and we cover it up in so much crap that it can come out in things as horrible and horrendous as child abuse. And so whether you're the person who is being abused or is doing the abusing, knowing that at your core, there is something about you that is true for all of us. Coming back to knowing that, exploring that. If you've never heard that before, just be interested and open. I'm inviting you to see if that is possible for you. And start, you know, if you're someone that's listening that perhaps hasn't been abused or isn't in an abusive situation, but you're looking to know what to do out in the world where that is happening, start from knowing that. Look to see if that's true for you. Begin to explore if that love, that diamond, and I'm using those interchangeably, at your core, is there any way you can glimpse that to be true for you? And start from there. Because I don't know what should be done about child abuse in this moment, but I do know that when I look back to that being true, the things that I then turn up and do are more helpful. And when I invite you to look to see if that's true, things that will come through you in your life will be helpful. There'll be something, we're all called to do different things in our lives. And I think we can sometimes be called to do something and it appears as though there's no correlation between what we're called to do and resolving something like child abuse. But what I'm absolutely certain of, and what I'm inviting you to look to see if this is true for you too, is that when we do what we are called to do from that knowing of our inner diamond, actually there is a correlation. Actually, there is things that have an impact, whether we know about it or not. And it starts to, somehow those things start to, they look different to us, and we get the opportunity to turn up differently towards them. And in some way that I can't quite put into words, that starts to resolve those problems. It starts to uncover what we individually can bring to the global situation.
What's coming to me when we're talking about this is, I know very often, and I know we have had conversations with people and been a part of conversations where it's felt like we need to do more, like it's not enough, what is going on, that's not enough. And also it can feel, sometimes the world can feel like it's a very unfair place, that certain people get picked on or bullied, and certain people are victims of this, and innocent people. Child abuse is a typical example of someone who is not in a position to fight back, to get away, to walk away, and it can feel as if that is very, very unfair, and it shouldn't happen, and all of these kinds of things. And absolutely, I can feel that coming up in me as we speak. But what I want to share is that in my journey, in what happened to me, was my children didn't have a great childhood. They certainly suffered when they were small. They certainly suffered as children. Their life wasn't fair, and it wasn't very nice at times. And when we eventually got out of that situation and I sorted myself out and turned my life around, I held a lot of guilt about what happened to my children, a tremendous amount of guilt, and it weighed heavily on me, and it was not nice in many ways. And what I could see from that place was I couldn't operate out in the world as just pure love. I couldn't be the change that I wanted to see in the world whilst carrying that with me. And so at some point I found a way to forgive myself and move forward. And very much, most of what Bec and I do out in the world now, I see that what I want to spread is love and happiness and peace. I want to be that out in the world. And at one point, someone actually challenged what I was doing and very much said, my children had suffered so much. What right had I got to be happy out in the world? How could I, from what I had done, how could I live with myself that my life is a good life and a privileged life and a beautiful life, and there's lots of joy and peace and happiness and love in it? What right have I got to live that way? And I definitely had a moment of seeing, I could see why that made sense. And I could absolutely see, this shouldn't be how my life is. I should be being punished. But what I saw when I looked again was that me holding on to that guilt and adding more pain in the world didn't solve the problem. It didn't put more love into the world. That didn't make it right. It was like the whole two wrongs don't make a right. More unhappiness, more punishment, more holding myself accountable for the terrible things I had done didn't make the world a better place, didn't make my children any happier, didn't solve any problem whatsoever. And yet being love out in the world, spreading joy, spreading happiness, saying that spreading the message that no one is broken, all those beautiful things, those words that Bec used about our inner diamond, doing those things, that can make a difference. And exactly like Bec said, we can only speak from what we truly know. And what I truly know here also is that, okay, what about child abuse was the question. Love is the answer. Now, what is the question? If we put more love and more joy into the world, somehow it may not seem as if it is enough. It may seem that people need to be punished. And I'm absolutely not saying that, we shouldn't do that. But what I see again and again and again is if we want less abuse in the world, the only way to change that is to fill the world with love. And however we do that, and it may feel disjointed and that we're not addressing the problem. And a bit like Bec said, I don't know what can come from that. But what I do know is that is our starting point. And then if we go inside, we are all called to do things. We are all called to, in our own ways, this is where we are all different. This is our individuality. And our whole business is based on dare to be you. Listen to what you are called to do inside you. And off the back of everything that happened to me, this is what I was called to do. This is the way I was called to spread love in the world and to have conversations with people who maybe are still suffering from things that have happened to them. And sometimes people who are causing suffering to other people, to have those conversations, and perhaps it opens their eyes and they are more loving out in the world. And so in some way we change that. So each and every one of us, in our very, very small way, if we can be a little bit more loving out in the world, that's what we're putting out there. And I think we would be, even more strongly than surprised, I think we would be really shocked at how much impact that could have if we would all go to the love in our hearts, not to the anger and discontent and upset because of what's happening.
The thing that was coming to me when you were sharing just then was the fairly well-known saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And whilst I can honestly say I've never abused a child, I can also say I have abused people, I have hurt people.
Me too.
And I can see on reflection now that I only did that from a space of me hurting. And I am extremely thankful and grateful that somebody, namely Deb and a few other people, saw that I was hurting, and the way to stop me hurting other people was to help me to heal, help me to see that I didn't need to hurt in that way. And whilst I completely see and respect that our justice system needs to do what it does, I can also see that it doesn't fully work, because what we don't do is we deal with the symptoms, not the problem. We put people away in prison so they can't access children and hurt them, but we never actually deal with what's going on for that person and why they would do that in the first place. And that for me is, as I said a little bit earlier, I don't know what the solution is here. I'm starting to see that maybe I do know what the solution is here. And the solution is to recognize that hurt people hurt people. And as soon as we know that, then it becomes obvious to us that the way to do something, and I don't know maybe what the exact things that we should go out and do individually in the world, but when we recognize that somebody could only abuse and hurt somebody if they are hurting in some way, if they're confused about what their pain or their suffering means and how to deal with that. And if we can look at that, if we can approach someone, whoever it is in our lives, from that understanding and from that love and compassion, you know, I'm thankful that when I was hurting other people, Deb was lovely and compassionate and caring towards me. And that allowed me to see that diamond within me and live from there, to kind of clean it, to polish it, to bring it back to life. And I don't hurt people anymore. That isn't who I am. I don't react and abuse and hurt people in the way that I used to, because I know that I don't need to. I know that if I'm in pain or suffering, I can come back to that diamond within. And so for me, it's like the answer here is for us to know that for ourselves first, always for us to know that for ourselves first. And from there, what we go out and do in the world, maybe you're never ever going to come face to face with somebody who's abusing children. I don't know, that may or may not be your path. But whoever you do come face to face with, if you're turning up from the knowledge of your diamond, and that when you're not hurting, you won't hurt people. And by knowing about your inner diamond, knowing that your essence is love, we just don't hurt people from that knowledge, from that knowing, from that understanding. And the more people that know that, the more it just grows. We can't help but be out in the world spreading and sharing love and happiness. Like Deb said right at the beginning, that is predominantly what we do. Because as we do that, it resonates for other people and it starts to open up something in that other person. And interestingly, I know I don't think I've ever spoken to somebody who abuses children, but I've seen stuff, you know, things that are written, people that do work with abusers and what they share, that 99% maybe of people that are abusing somebody, if they are given a moment to be entirely honest, they don't want to be doing that. You know, there's a lot of people that are in therapy for stuff like that because they don't actually want to be doing it. But something in them, it's like any kind of addictive behavior. We don't want to be doing that and hurting people in that way, but we don't quite know.
As well.
Yeah, we don't quite know what else to do. So in some way, the answer here is to come back to first off know that I am that diamond and that essence of love, and then just see who I can share that with, see in what ways I can make that known out in the world, which hopefully is what this show is doing in some small measure.
Yeah, I hope that is my biggest hope, that even if it feels like it's a huge problem and the answer is way too complicated for us ever to see, I do truly believe that it starts with us each connecting with the love inside of us, and seeing in small steps, seeing that we are lovable. Because I know a lot of the troubles that happened in my life was through my own insecurity, and exactly like Bec said, you know, then I got lost and I felt hurt and alone, and then I did things that weren't great in the world, because from that place, what else can we do? Yeah, hurt, lost, frightened people don't do great things. And so if each and every one of us finds that place of love inside us, and somehow, because there is a connection between every one of us, because we are not disconnected, because there is a oneness operating here, it will have way more impact than you can imagine, going inside yourself and connecting with your own love, and finding that a lot of what we talk about is about self-love, finding yourself and being that love out in the world.
So if that's kind of brought anything up for you, if you know, I mean, it's a big topic to cover in a short show.
Very short show.
So if there's, you know, if you have follow-up questions or other questions or topics you'd like us to cover, we're very easy to get hold of. You can comment wherever you're watching this video, you'll be able to comment, or you can connect with us through Facebook, where we've got a group Dare to Be You with the purple heart. You can connect with us there or send us a direct message. We're very easy to get hold of, and we love hearing from you.
And if you do comment or message, we will respond personally, so please feel free to do so. And so next week we're going to do, we have been, I think because we've been inviting big questions, we've been having
we're getting some.
We're getting some. So next week we're going to be talking about, is it the time to fight for change? So that's going to be our topic that we are going to discuss and dive deeply into next week. And is there anything else before we?
I think that's everything. Thank you very much for joining us.
So take care, and hopefully we will see you somewhere soon. Bye for now.